following program is a peer-to-peer advice show and does not diagnose mental health conditions. If you're seeking social services, please call or text 211 or go to 211.ca. Hello, listeners around the world on radio, streaming, and podcast services. This is It's Not Therapy. I'm Leanna Kersner, and I am not a therapist, but I am your source for navigating the madness of mental health using my top 10 sayings for going good crazy. This week, we're talking about kids and phones. And the government of Canada recently presented a bill called the Safe Social Media Act, Bill C-34, that, among other things, establishing a digital safety commission, setting safety criteria, guidelines for social media, AI chatbots. The thing that got the biggest pop was a ban on social media accounts for kids under 16, with some exceptions that are probably still being worked out. Now, fortunately, a few weeks ago, I've got a backlog of interviews right now, nice problem to have, but I happened to talk to an expert on kids and phones. And it was because of the phone bans coming to U.S. schools in the fall. Her name is Rosanne Campana-Hodge, Dr. Rosanne Campana-Hodge, and she is an expert on this subject. She has a podcast called Dysregulated Kids. She is very insightful about this topic, and the interview went quite long, so I want to give a maximum amount of time for it. This is a complicated subject, right? Because you understand why parents are saying, we need this ban. Absolutely. I also understand why teenagers are saying, we will get around this ban. But when we're seeing increased screen use, including in children under the age of 2, this is something where facts and talking about the facts and talking about what we know and what we don't is very important. So we're going to do that this week. Questions, comments, any feedback, Leanna at nottherapyshow.com is my direct email, or at nottherapyshow on social media. We'll be back with an expert on what's going on with kids and phones. What can we expect as these bans come in? Dr. Rosanne Campana-Hodge after the break on It's Not Therapy. The following program is a peer-to-peer advice show and does not diagnose mental health conditions. If you're seeking social services, please call or text 211 or go to 211.ca. We're back in It's Not Therapy. I'm still Leanna Kersner. I'm still not a therapist. We are still talking about a very, very important topic about kids and phones, with school bans for phones coming in on the horizon this fall in a lot of places. And I have an expert guest. We need an expert on this one. I am not a therapist. My guest, Dr. Rosanne Campana-Hodge, is a licensed child mental health therapist. Not only that, guys, she's got 30 years of experience. She's got a top 1% podcast, Dysregulated Kids. She's got a book coming out in September, but it is available for pre-order now. It's called The Dysregulated Kid. It focuses on helping kids build real coping skills, not just managing behavior. And Rosanne, I think that's the crux of this issue, right? We talk about kids behaving instead of kids coping or thriving. And I do think, well, you tell me, are phones and being hooked on phones a symptom of that?
Yeah. And, the way I look at behavior, and thank you for starting with that, because the way I look at behavior, both as a mother and as a clinician who's worked with tens of thousands of kids, is that it's just a clue to what's actually going on in the nervous system. And there are many things that cause us to regulate, and then there are many things that cause us to dysregulate. And I like to think of the nervous system and our kids and their body as sort of a cup, right? And we have a stress cup. And so things fill up our cup all day, but hopefully, and what all of my work is about is teaching you how to take some of that stress out. But devices can when, too much usage, the wrong kind of usage, it can fill our stress cup. And some kids, Leanna, are more sensitive to it.
Yeah. Now, so there is a bit of a nature. Some kids just, is it type of stress? Is it amount of stress? Is it both?
Yeah, it's unique to everybody in some ways,
Hmm.
but what is happening in the world, right? We often parents come to me and they're like, "What's going on?" I try to get Joey off his device and, he put a hole in the wall. He freaks out on me every time, whatever it is. There's, he shuts down, he hides in his room. All these things happen and they're happening to young kids. They're happening to middle schoolers. They're
Yeah.
happening to young adults. That this is what's happening out in the world. And so when we think about stress, right,
Hmm.
that's just one of the most common ones. Some of the other common ones, Leanna, are food and food restricting,
Hmm.
social and social friendships, school, just having too much. There are many others. So please don't think if I didn't mention yours that it's not there. And so when we grew up, we used to think, and I don't think it was so different in some ways, but the stress levels are higher. We think, wow, he freaked out. It was about taking that device. Was it? Was it really about that device? Or was it all the things that came before and filled their stress cup? And for those of us that have more than one kid, I think that we can see the differences in how our kids handle uncomfortable things, things they don't want to let go of, like their
Hmm.
device, or things they don't want to do, which is homework, right? And or whatever it is, right? Take a bath, eat broccoli. And so there's this spectrum of stress tolerance. And there are some kids that are better at it, and we can talk about that. And there are some kids that have a stress cup that fills too quickly.
Hmm.
Some of that could be neurodivergence. Some of that could be that there's a lot of pressures on these kids throughout the school day. Maybe they're not so great socially. Maybe they are great socially, but they got excluded, and then school becomes this awful thing, right? So, and I don't mean to put it on school. Maybe they have a really dysregulated sibling with mental
Hmm.
health issues, and then that builds their stress cup. Maybe they got a mom and dad with unresolved stuff, and that's just showing up at home, and then that's causing that kid to stress out. So there can be a multitude of things. Sometimes they're big things. Sometimes they're all the little things that add up throughout the day that maybe you're not thinking of, from food textures to light to smells to difficulty transitioning, you name it. But ultimately, in the end, we have this world, and it's not just in the US, Leanna, it's definitely more prevalent here because I work with people all over the world,
Hmm.
is that we think that kids should just snap in, do what the good kid is doing, do what their brother is doing, whatever it is, do what they did. And they're not really understanding this chronic activation of the nervous system from all these little things, and that we have to actively do things to regulate. And what happens is kids can appear like they have clinical issues, and they might not. And so, what is the first thing that happens? They go and talk to a pediatrician, and then they're often offered a medication
Right.
when they should be offered something else, which is parenting help.
Right. But that's a challenge. And then the shame and the guilt and the parents come in. And
Oh,
that's another,
definitely.
yeah, that's another thorny thing. So we're talking to Roseanne Capana Hodge, licensed child mental health therapist, about phones. Let's break down the basics. Is there a time that no screens? Like, I've heard before the age of 2, I've heard before the age of 18 months, I've heard before the age of 6. What do you think about when, like, no screens not good?
Yeah, there's different points of data because I'm a data girl.
Yeah.
So a lot of our information is actually based on television usage, Leanna, but we now have a lot of research. There's been some significant research, particularly I think there was one released in January about the long-term usage of devices. It tends to be older kids, but what we do know is tell that devices are not recommended before age 2.
Right. Okay.
Now,
Age
you're
2.
hard pressed to go to any restaurant in America I mean, I went to like a fancy restaurant, Leanna, where lunch was $400 for one person. It was a special thing.
Mm-hmm.
It was my friend's divorce birthday party. And lo and behold, there was a kid that definitely was somewhere around two. And I thought,
Mm-hmm.
wow, that kid's so great. And I almost went up to them to say, what a great kid. Then I finally, somebody got up and I could see he was just watching a device. And I
Right.
thought, that kid has no business being at a $400 a person restaurant. How about that? Um, I'm
But
sure,
yeah.
but because little kids shouldn't be at schmancy restaurants. But that's too much pressure. It's
Yeah.
too much pressure on a kid. Kids should be able to be free and running around, and us patrons don't want that either. So, but here's the thing that young kids, right? The problem with device usage of young kids is not that they're using the device, it's that what are they not doing?
Watching
What are they
faces.
not doing that's developing their
Yeah.
brains?
Yeah.
That's developing the eye-hand coordination, that's teaching them patience, but also more importantly, when we use devices, right, we put the nervous system in a constant state of activation. They're getting dopamine hit. It's like gambling. The brain is going to crave it and it's going to become intolerant of boredom, just being still, discomfort. And we need that nervous system to have times of powering down. We also need creativity, right?
Mm-hmm.
So the devices aren't the devil. It's just that they produce dysregulation. I actually call it device dysregulation. And we have to have the right balance, but more importantly, and I say this super loud and clear, I might even repeat it, is that what we need is clear boundaries, clear rules, not after the fact when you're pissed off at your kid that they're on their device, but in advance, because there's nothing more important than clear communication. And it doesn't guarantee your kid's not going to get upset, but I
Right.
promise you it will make it a lot better. And it might mean you have to put some elbow grease around it and don't give up. But you kids need to have boundaries, not just for your own parenting sanity, but for their mental wellness, because we know that particularly passive device usage, like scrolling on YouTube, is associated with mental health issues. Now, here's the good news. We do know that when kids are engaging with their friends on devices, that it's actually associated with better mental health.
Yes.
It's right?
Yes.
But we can't just be on a device for 6 hours.
Right. And that's the concern I've heard from people who are concerned about phone bans, because for a lot of, especially that kind of, not preteen, I guess you'd call
Yeah.
it, like 12 to 15 years old, when kids are figuring out who they are, maybe parents don't get it. That phone is a lifeline for a lot of them and figuring out who they are and feeling acceptance. And it's terrifying for parents. I sympathize because even I see kids on Discord at 6, and I'm going, that is an unregulated platform in a lot of
Most
ways.
definitely.
Yeah. And so that's obviously there's concern, but then it's what are these kids looking at? Oh, memes from their favorite cartoons and things like that. So it's not just the phone, as you said, right? It's
Yeah.
about what they're accessing. Like that phone is a portal. The same way that books were for me and video games. I'm of the generation where they had parents terrified. I'm from the Dungeons and Dragons moral panic of the 1980s, and I come it with that. There was this game and it was horrible and it was satanic. It was causing kids to worship the devil and kill themselves. And I'm like, no, no, it was none of that. It was a really clear, fun exploration tool where like me and my friends could be a bunch of losers and no one was going to pick on us for it, right? Like we
Yeah.
could wear silly hats and do silly voices and pretend to do magic, but we knew it wasn't real. So that boundaries issue
Yeah.
is central. And I'm sure you see a lot of parents that can't do boundaries. And now not only do they have to figure out what a boundary is and how to establish it, they've got to do it and parent at the same time. What do you do? First of all, what is a boundary? What is not a boundary? And how do you teach a parent a boundary when you've been hired to look at the kid?
Yeah. First of all, a boundary isn't something that's punitive. A
Right.
boundary isn't something that is bad because these are common myths. And, what I have found is that, particularly women, most people aren't learning how to set boundaries until they get to their 40s.
Hmm.
Right. And so there's a whole gender bias that, we expect women to accommodate and men are clearer about, things. I'm not saying across the board, but just kind of a generality. And so boundaries are healthy, but most people set boundaries incorrectly. They set
Yeah.
them when they're mad. And I
Yep.
mean that not just with kids, I mean that in the workplace. I mean that with other friendships. They are like, I'm going to get to my boiling point and then I'm going to set a boundary. So they are clear, whether you want to call them guidelines or rules or, non-negotiables about device usage. And here, when we're talking about device usage at school. So 36 states are now having a ban at school. And I think what we have to think about is I'm not sure parents are prepared for it because we over rely on reaching our kids at school, right? And so the parents go, well, you know what? I need to reach my kid. Well, we grew up I grew up in the 70s and 80s. I mean, if it was an emergency, you called the school and they called down or whatever.
Right.
One of my children goes to a school that has has a phone ban and it's fine. You know what he does? He
Right.
actually will send me an email
Right.
if he needs to reach me.
Right.
I mean, there are alternatives because every school has computers. So, those kinds of things are right. That idea that I absolutely must reach them. Let go of that, mom and dad, because that's your stuff. Number two, kids rely on them to connect with other kids socially, they use apps to relieve stress for them. And I'm not
Hmm.
talking mental health apps. I'm talking about other kinds of apps. There are some mental health apps and they're using Chat GPT as their therapist. I wouldn't recommend that because
We've
the
done
whole
shows on
premise is,
that. Yeah.
yeah. Don't get me wrong. I love AI peeps. Like, I'm not an anti AI
Right.
person, but like, you need the right tool. You need like an actual platform that is for that, is trained on the work of mental health people, right? So that's important. So, what are kids using for? And, here are the questions, right? So, first of all, I think we have to ask our kids, you have to have a conversation with your kids. Like, hey, this band is coming to your school in September. What do you think about that? What do you think that's going to look like? Ask them. I love to ask kids, don't ask kids how they feel. Unless you're talking about feelings, you're a therapist, forget it. They don't
Hmm.
understand it. But ask them what they think it looks like, right? Because we want to address any fears. We don't want to have a meltdown. You want to have a meltdown and concerns and tears while you're there.
Right.
And if they're upset, you're going to say, I get it. Like, you talk to your friends, it's, how you connect. But the other part of it is you have to open the door to, I like to talk about my 1980s shenanigans, Leanna, and, be like, we wrote notes. Remember?
Those things that you folded,
Yeah.
remember? And you
Yeah.
opened one. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah. Yeah.
absolutely. And, we still got the rumors around, Leanna. I mean, we still did. Oh,
Yeah.
yeah. Oh, yeah. I'd be like, how did that get here that fast? Grapevine. But, talk to them about, have you thought of another way to connect your friends, and those kinds of things. Everything from, did you prearrange to who you're sitting with lunch with, and just different things that maybe they just haven't thought of, but you are cool 70s, 80s, and 90s parents. And you've been there. This is when your actual things that you did in the past could serve you, right? And you have to reassure them, but also help them think about the solutions to their stress. Because I think some kids are going to be fine, but I think some kids are so over reliant on their phones. Heck, I mean, some adults are over reliant on their
Yes.
phones,
Yes.
right? And then, how can you use this as an opportunity for your kid to learn and figure out? And then you maybe really have to talk about coping skills.
Let's go to a
Simple.
break and talk about coping skills. We come back because this isn't talked about enough. Dr. Roseanne Capana Hodge, licensed child mental health therapist. Check out her book. You can pre-order. It's coming in September. The Dysregulated Kid. Her number one Top number one podcast, Dysregulated Kids. If you can't wait, you gotta hear more from Roseanne right away. Dysregulated Kids, her podcast. When we come back, coping skills for kids and adults on It's Not Therapy. Questions, comments, any feedback, Leanna at nottherapyshow.com, nottherapyshow.com, at Not Therapy Show on social media. I'm still getting used to a different thing. Say technology changes. When we come back, more with Roseanne. The following program is a peer-to-peer advice show and does not diagnose mental health conditions. If you're seeking social services, please call or text 211 or go to 211.ca. We're back on Us with Therapy. I'm still Leanna Kersner. I'm still not a therapist. We are still talking about kids and cell phones and social media, the bans on social media for under 16, the bans on phones in schools, kids and screens with the absolutely wonderful fountain of information. Dr. Roseanne Campana-Hodge, host of the Top 1% podcast, Dysregulated Kids, and the book that is coming out in September, The Dysregulated Kid. That's Roseanne. And wow, we covered a lot in the first segment, Roseanne, but we talked about coping skills. And this is a surprisingly tough one, right? The concept of distress tolerance and emotional regulation seems easy, but when it comes to applying them, because you said everybody's got a stress cup. People have different stress cups for different things. I know for me, people stress, no problem. Money stress, totally different thing, right? And when you're a parent and you're stressed and you have a stress cup and you're barely holding on, but you don't want to show your kid, how do you teach a child coping skills?
Yeah, I mean, the old analogy of you've got to put your own oxygen mask on is a very true one. But in all fairness, I have a whole section in my book, but also I talk all about it on my show. Co-regulation. We have to regulate ourselves and we have to regulate ourselves first. You can't go in and if your child is being, withdrawing or reactive and their nervous system is distressed in any way, shape, or form, you can't go in and rescue them. It's essentially saying you're drowning and you're going to rescue a drowning person. Mm-hmm. You can't do it. It just is not going to happen. We know that, yet we go down the slippery slope. We get irritated with our kids because you've asked them 5 freaking times to get off the device and they're not. But then again, I want you to go back and look at, what are you doing in advance? I talk about the 3-second miracle. It's called the love pause. And for 3 seconds, you just pause. And you don't have to go in and rescue. You don't have to react to your kid. You literally pause before you do or say anything. And a lot can happen in 3 seconds. You can do breath work. You can say a mantra. You can pray to Jesus or whoever else you pray to. But you can pull yourself together because boy, if we paused 3 seconds every time, we were annoyed at our mother-in-law or, try to yell at your kids or whatever is going on, the world would, and how about if everybody else in the world did it? We would be a lot better off in the world, right? And so that love pause is about loving yourself and loving your child and giving it that moment to calm because your child of any age, I mean, my work is for very young children to failure to launch 35-year-olds still living with their parents, okay? Because I know a lot of people like that. There's a range of developmental abilities in self-regulation, and self-regulation is a taught skill. It's a learned skill over time. Mm-hmm. You're not born with it. Some people are more naturally regulated, but that's because they tend to take stress out of their stress cup, which is a whole other conversation. But when we are building coping skills, our child is going to first regulate off of us. So right. If you're dysregulated, you should expect your child to be dysregulated. Don't yell at your child to stop yelling.
Which everybody's like, that was my childhood.
Yeah. I mean, right. And your parents, I talk about my parents, Tony and Philomene, all the time. They did the best they could. You know, my mom, man, when she was mad, Leanna, she whipped out a wooden spoon. She didn't use it on us,
Oh,
but
slippers. Deadly aim with slippers,
yeah,
my
my
grandmother.
mom
Yeah.
didn't use it. But man, your ass, you better move and run when that happens. Let me tell you, something like that. My mother, Philomena, she was like Beth Dutton. You don't mess with her. And you know, and so what happens is their nervous system is either going to mirror your chaos or mirror your
Yeah.
calm, and that 3 seconds is going to give you that ability. I don't want to minimize it. It is that powerful. And here's the things, moms, dads, aunts, uncles, grandparents, you got to actually do these things. What are you going to do in these 3 seconds? Not sit there and say this kid's doing this on purpose. I promise you, most kids aren't acting on purpose.
Yeah.
They're just their nervous system is so dysregulated. It's a big, what we call id. I want, I want, I want.
Yeah.
Right? Right. So that's step one. That is a non-negotiate. Regulate first. Ideally, you get your kid to regulate, but once they start, activating because of the device, then there are things you can do. Like, wow, I see that's hard for you. You can have clear boundaries. But the boundaries then have to be set in advance before you hand your kid a device, before you let your kid get on, and whether it's fun time or whatever it is,
Mhm.
you need to have, I prefer in writing. Okay. If your kid is too young to read, have pictures. What is the amount of time? What are the rules? 3 warnings. Now, what I always did is said, well, if I have to ask you more than 3 times and you lose it for the next 3 days, whatever it is. But here's the other part of this. You got to mean what you say.
Yeah.
Don't threaten your kids. I'm going to send you to boarding school. These are all things people have told me. I'm going to send you to boarding school. You'll never have a device again. I'm going to break it. You've got a problem. I never did that. You didn't have the device, people. We had Atari. Okay.
Yeah.
It was not designed to be like that,
Right.
and God forbid our parents would never let us sit in our basement with our Atari for 7 hours. It
Mm-mm.
just didn't happen. And then these kids are on devices all day at school because learning is on devices now.
Right. Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Yeah. So do that. And then I really like to, Leanna, when kids come off device or I come off device, especially if I'm on it for a few hours, which sometimes I am,
Yeah.
I do a movement transition. Simple, simple, simple. It could be 10 jumping jacks. Before I got on this call, I'm big into Tai Chi. So I have a couple little simple Tai Chi movements and I do 100 reps of one thing.
Oh, cool.
So, yeah, that's what I do. I do it all day long. I try to do it in between things. It is so dramatic in my actual physical health, but also just the alertness of my brain is completely different. Simple, it's free. But what has to happen? You got to do it.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
You got it.
and you have to be consistent. And your kids will just start doing these things on their own without you asking, with the consistency most of the time. But some kids may need more sensory tools, but you need boredom. You need some boredom, and obviously some kids need structured boredom. You can't just do what you did in the first few weeks of the pandemic, go play with your toys.
Right.
You
Right.
can say, hey, now's the time to pull out your Legos. Now's the time to get out your artwork. How about, in my house, we cook. My kids, man, that's what I make them do. I make them cook. They're advanced chefs, these kids.
That's a great
Get them
skill.
going. Yeah. And even if they don't have the magic, they can cut onions.
Oh, yeah.
They can prep stuff. Like, it's not rocket science.
No.
Get them transitioning to other things. My we're really like what everything you think of as Italians, Leanna. Like, food is our love.
Okay.
It's our love language for other people. It's like our love language for us. And my kids really value really good food. Like, they just don't like junk food. They're like,
Right.
they would much rather have a steak or king crab legs than a bag of Cheetos. It's just the way it works. They're Italian. So lots of structure, giving yourself a pause and a moment to regulate yourself before you approach your child who's dysregulating over a device. And then what are you doing outside of that device? Because everyone hampers on the device. They're so mad that their kids are on it, but they're not setting the boundaries. They're not giving them structured boredom or sensory time. And those clear limits with consequences, not
Hmm.
threatening. Now, again, listen, kids, I'm just as much in the same boat as you. So you don't know me, but I always say that I never ask parents to do anything that I haven't done.
Right.
And this is not easy. I think device usage, because of the nature of that device, especially touchscreen devices, I mean, just the dopamine hit, it's so designed to keep you activated that the nervous system starts
Yes.
craving that.
Yeah. Well,
It's
the
tough.
the norepinephrine too, right? Like that
Yes.
constant jolt. People think that's feeling good, but that is a stress response.
Yes.
And when you're elevated in that stress response and you start to come down off of it, you feel like you're depressed, but you're not. You're just not used to running at a regulated level. It is the strangest thing, unless you've been through it. I call it an hangover, that feeling where you've been really worked up and then you
Yes.
feel like you have the flu. Now, a lot of parents are, I've heard this because we live in mental health culture. So there's a lot of therapeutic language. Kids at a certain age, they go through certain things. They know they can say abuse and everything stops. And I know some parents are afraid to give consequences because they've had an experience where other parents judge or somebody unfortunately called family services on
Yeah.
them and they're afraid to set limits because they're afraid to get labeled an abuser. So, how do you set fair, positive consequences for your kids without crossing over into, you know, back in my day, it was get the belt for kids,
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, I think that if somebody has had a previous experience with their own child saying, I'm going to say you're abusing, or maybe they already did say that, you are in a crisis situation
Yeah.
and you need to get to a therapist immediately, a family therapist, not a child therapist, a family therapist, because this isn't just a child issue. Somehow, whatever your child's level of dysregulation or sense of empowerment, I don't know the answer to that. That has to be dealt with therapeutically. And on top of that, you want to. I've had situations, Leanna, where people have come to me, not in this exact situation, but I'm afraid to do X, Y, and Z. I'm
Right.
afraid my child, I'm afraid DCF will, the Department of Families will come. And I hear you. So it's documented. And there have been times where they came to me and I'm like, let me explain to you. This is my clinical opinion. And
Mhm.
never once did it proceed beyond that because me as a provider, I was clear about what it was and the child's difficulties, right? There are many situations people sometimes adopt kids with trauma backgrounds, or maybe there was a trauma or whatever. And so kids can become threatening or lie and all these other things, not because they necessarily mean to, because they're so dysregulated that it's a survival mechanism. I know that sounds hard to understand, but really that's what it is. But parents, the problem is when you're setting the boundary, again, you can't set the boundary in the mess. All
Right.
right. You have to set the boundary before in regulated moments. Now, your child might dysregulate, but you still have to set a boundary. If you are afraid of your child, I actually just had an entire conversation with a stranger about this yesterday, and they kept letting it go and letting it go and letting it go. And it did get to the point where the police were called in and the kid became very aggressive and, lots and lots of things. But, he said to me, I asked for help in the fourth grade. I got sent to a psychiatrist. All I was given was medication,
Yeah.
which made it worse. They wind up trying to find a therapist. They just had a really hard time finding help, which I think is a problem overall. And these conversations are helpful. There are no replacement of a therapy. But again, if your child, it makes you feel that way and that is your situation, I'm telling you, you're in a crisis. And if you don't put a kibosh on this is going to get worse. So that's what I would say to that is you need professional help. Now, if you're just afraid to put boundaries into place and your kid isn't an aggressive type, but they're going to be emotionally upset and they're going to cry, guess what? Put your big girl panties, your big boy boxers on, and get it done, because you are afraid of boundaries. This isn't about your child overreacting to the boundaries, which children react to boundaries. That's normal. We're right. But we need your kids to have stress tolerance. If they don't have stress tolerance, you are inviting lifelong mental health issues. Let me say that again. If
Yeah.
you don't have stress tolerance, you're inviting your child to have lifelong mental health issues. And no parent wants that. None.
Yeah. I work with some young adults who are high performing. You know, they did real well in school. They got out of the adult world where they had to make their own decisions, and it was catastrophic because they didn't know how to make mistakes. Every bump in the road resulted in catastrophic thinking of, I'm going to fail this test, therefore I'm going to fail this class, there I'm going to fail
Yes.
school, and then I'm not going to get a good job, and I'm going to be out on the street as soon as my parents die, freak out.
Yeah.
And like you said, that's taught.
That's
Right.
taught because
Yeah.
we bubble wrap our kids, Leanna, and we think that we don't want them to experience distress, but little bits of distress actually build stress tolerance. Somebody says, I did something hard
Yeah.
and I got through it, right? You can always
Right.
process with your kid. You can say, wow, that was really hard, man. But you did it. Let's talk about how you did it. That was great. And you don't want to talk to your kid about strategies and problem solving when they're irritated, but later when they're regulated and you can help them see the solutions, because especially for kids that dysregulate a lot,
Yeah.
we are always talking negative to them. Don't do this, stop this. I wish
Yes.
and so some of these kids just give up. Some of these kids dig their heels in more. And I don't mean that from a behavioral perspective. I mean their nervous system just goes into that activated
Yes.
state more and more and more. And here's the great news. The more you regulate, the more your nervous system will regulate. And the flip side on the negative is the more you dysregulate, the more it will have the habit of dysregulation. So, stress tolerance and being able to manage devices and coping skills, those are built in little moments that add up.
I remember I had a family member, grown now, but when he was a kid, there were additional needs. And a
Yes.
discussion with the aides was, okay, was this a meltdown or was this just a little boy having a bad day? And you almost saw the relief in the worker when they were asked that question. But where is the line with kids? Because sometimes they get very upset and then it's done,
Yeah.
Other times you do have to kind of comfort them a little while still not trying to take it all away, right? Where is the difference between hurt and harm? How does somebody know where it's just a big reaction that is a learning experience and when you shouldn't intervene, something's really not right?
Yeah. And it's such a common question that I get. And I talk so much about it. And I have a whole chapter called Rethinking Clinical Diagnoses in my book because I want people to see the range of dysregulation, that we have signs of understimulation, like focus problems and withdrawal and shutdown, anxiety, and signs of overstimulation, like anger, OCD, mood issues, and then combinations, right? So all kids dysregulate sometimes. It
Mhm.
is perfectly normal to dysregulate. Here's when you got to worry. Here's when you say, you got yourself a problem, is when there is an intensity, frequency, and duration that is excessive. So it's super, super intense, like scary kind of intense. Like
Mhm.
I had a kid where they had to clean everything out of their room and just had a bed because he would throw everything around. That is intense. Then frequency, it's happening all the time. Okay. So it's happening. You're like, what just happened? Like they didn't have his pretzels and I got him chips and he's literally punching his sister. Right. Okay. Then duration, it's happening for very long times and the recovery is poor. So it's the duration of the episode, and then it's the recovery is very poor. And those tend to be, for 30 something years. I mean, people flew in all over the world to work with me. I no longer see patients because I'm on this mission to teach regulation first, very simply and easily and accessible. There's not a person that can't do this. The only way you're not going to be able to regulate in my book is if you choose not to. That's it. It's so easy. I made it like so easy, not theory. So when, people always come to me and say, coulda, woulda, shoulda, Leanna. And I always I don't want anybody to feel bad. I am a mother of uniquely wired kids. I get it. But you can only connect the dots looking back. So if you're hearing this and you're like, wow, my kid is all three, he's intense, it's frequent duration, or any one of those, nobody ever regrets getting help. I've never heard somebody say, I got help and that was a waste of time. Now, have I ever had somebody say, like, I had a lousy therapist? Yeah, there are a lot of lousy therapists. I would say 1/3 of therapists should not be practicing. They have not properly addressed their own mental health issues. And I say that as somebody who trained a lot of people, where I was like, girl, you need to go to therapy, right? And get that worked out before you try to help somebody else. It's just a natural thing that we're drawn to help people. Same thing with nurses. 75% of nurses have one or more of their parents had a substance issue. Okay. So these things play out, but we have to have health in ourselves. It doesn't mean you have a trauma background, you can't help somebody, but have you resolved your issues? Have you done trauma work?
Right.
So I hear people's resistance and I tell you these things. The other part of this is that you have to regulate yourself at least to some level to pull yourself out of fight, flight, or freeze. If you don't regulate first, you cannot access your thinking brain. The coping skills, not only you're not going to develop them, but even if you had them, the brain is not going to allow you to use them. So let's get that nervous system working, regulating enough, not perfectly. And, these things work. I've done these things with the most extreme cases. And they always worked when the parents did what I asked you them to and regulated themselves first. Did they work overnight? I have a magic wand always on my desk.
Of course not. Of course not. Right.
But what you're doing ain't working. And it's only getting more heated. And maybe you're trying your 5th medication and you're now listening and thinking, oh, well, maybe there's something else. Yeah, I promise you there's something else. Even if there is a clinical issue, and I'm not telling anybody not to do medication. All I ever say about medication with kids is we should never use it first, right? Unless there is an extreme safety issue, we should be doing other things. And us poor parents, nobody ever teaches these things.
No. Last question.
Yeah.
With video games and kids, I've found that having the kids be part of setting the schedule for the games, the fact that they were included and asked so that they were part of the rule that they then had to follow works better. Is it the same with cell phones?
Oh, I think any type of device usage. My stuff is across the board, helping your kid, even giving your kid a warning and then saying, how much longer do you think you need to finish this level? Okay? Instead of get the heck off there right now or blah, 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 blah. But, sometimes, and then it becomes easy, really cuts down. I found these to be incredibly helpful with my kids. I have one kid who dysregulates a lot more than another kid who's pretty easy. And yes, help them design it and then give them a little power. If they're like, hey, I need 30 more minutes and they've only got 30 minutes, that's a different story. And also don't give your kids 10 minutes for a device. That's not going to work.
No.
You could even set that up. How long do you think you need with your friends?
Right. And then hold them to the boundary that they set.
Absolutely. And if you struggle with boundaries, I struggle with boundaries only not because I'm great at setting boundaries because my mother Philomena set boundaries with everybody, but it's because I'm busy. Right. So when the kids were little, we don't do it as much now. We do have it at night. We use an outside device, Wi-Fi management. So the Wi-Fi is budgeted and then there's no arguing.
Yeah.
You don't even have to say anything. The device goes off on their own. And
yeah,
they
you're
might
not
come
the
to
warden. Yeah.
Yeah, they might come to you and say, "Hey, can I have 10 more minutes?" And I say, in our house, they have to earn it. So I'd say, "Well, what are you going to do for that?" They usually don't even ask. They say, "Hey, if I empty the dishwasher, can I get 10 more minutes?"
Oh, that's
Yeah.
great.
Okay. Oh, yeah, absolutely. I need my kids to be independent.
Oh,
Like,
that's
yeah.
it, right? Ask for what you want, learn to negotiate, learn to offer something, give to get. That's a
Yes.
massive life skill that people learn too late.
And even if your kid is 18, 19, 20 and you're really worried, please, first of all, if your kid is a stuck kid and not moving, get help. And if your kid won't go because they've had a lot of lousy therapists, I just had
Yeah.
this conversation today with a parent, go yourself. Go and get the help yourself and find ways to be able to talk to your kid because that will help. And once a kid is wounded and full of shame, it's just that much longer. It doesn't mean it's not fixable. I really don't I believe that every situation can be addressed if you have willing participants.
And that whole issue of shame is a totally different thing that we do not have time for.
No.
Dr. Roseanne Cabanna-Hodge, so much to talk about. And that's why she has a top 1% podcast, Dysregulated Kids. Take advantage of her 30 years of experience on podcasts and pre-order her book coming out in September. The Dysregulated Kid focuses, like this interview did, on helping kids building real coping skills, not just managing behavior. Roseanne, thank you so much for your wisdom and your insights and incredible power in conveying both.
Well, thank you so much. And, don't give up hope if you're listening. It just takes one step.
All right, we're going to take our final break, come back real quick. Questions, comments, any feedback, Leanna@nottherapyshow.com is my email, @nottherapyshow on social media. That will be banned soon for children under 16. Anyway, more on that when we come back. Final thoughts. The following program is a peer-to-peer advice show and does not diagnose mental health conditions. If you're seeking social services, please call or text 211 or go to 211.ca. We're back and It's Not Therapy. I'm still Leanna Kersner. I'm still not a therapist, and we have precious little time left in this show. I couldn't stop talking to Roseanne. She is an expert on stuff I'm not. I know a lot about video games and mental health and compulsive video game use and stuff like that. But phones, I learned a lot. I hope you learned a lot too about kids and screen use and the underlying stuff, which is very similar to video games. But change is coming. It's going to take a while to get the balance right. And as somebody who was a kid that had fights with parents over it was the Atari and then it was the Sega, I really recommend talk to your kids about why they are so glued to the device. Don't just force it away from them. Don't make them feel like they're being punished for really loving something. And like we said in the interview, come to a solution together. And together, we have to end this show. Questions, comments, any feedback. If you want to be a guest on the show, Leanna@nottherapyshow.com or @nottherapyshow on social media. Remember, you know what's coming. You're crazy or your kid's crazy is only a problem if it's hurting you. See you next time.